Talking to Reverend Reuben Dockery, the pastor of Mount Sinai, Cumberland Presbyterian Church, and also a person who has developed a program, a mentoring program dealing with issues dealing with fatherhood. And of course, Reverend Dockery, let's give you an opportunity over this last segment that we have here to talk about your program in a way that the individuals that you would like to reach can be attracted to that program, as well as the individuals you would like to help you reach those individuals. Right. You said, you know, you're dealing with the criminal justice system and with the social system and et cetera. And there ought to be a large number of individuals who can identify with what you're saying and ought to be willing to cooperate with you, because there's a tremendous need for us to do what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, thank you. Three groups that I'd like to reach, if no other groups. One, the individual male who are interested in dealing with their issues of not knowing how to be responsible. And that's not to say that what you do for your children is not worth anything. But it's to say that if there is a way by which you can improve on that and you can make that better, then let's do that. Number two, we're looking for individuals who would serve as corporate sponsors or individual sponsors, those who will enable us to make this message broader and take it to a larger audience. And lastly, we're looking for a collaboration with institutions such as the penal institutions, the educational institutions, and other social service agencies that are concerned with it. Last we did a research on the Nashville community, trying to find out what service organizations existed. We found that there were 21 such organizations that existed for women and children, but there were very few that existed for men who were displaced. So one of the things we want to do is, again, not to get in a battle between genders, but focus on a well-developed and a problem that certainly has credence. And there's a tremendous need to address that issue, because what we find is that what's going on here has a lot to do with some of the other things that are going on, and often they precipitate those things. So focus of this program, under the guise of building families and communities with our nonprofit organization, is to focus on this as an area of concern. And so we, you know, as I mentioned, those three groups, the individual sponsors, as well as government agencies and things of that nature. But we want to be able to make sure we sustain the process. It's interesting, as we look at what happened down in off the Gulf Coast.
Thank you.
It's unfortunate, you know, but it's not just a black issue, but certainly we saw the subgroup that was affected the most. And it was sad to see how many men who did not have a clue. They were waiting on the government to do things that they could have done, or perhaps if they had been prepared would have done for themselves. And that's not to say that we don't work with the government. But in the United States, there are 50 states, some 3,000 county governments, and a number of precinct governments within those counties. And each man in their precinct has a right to ensure that tax dollars that are spent are going in a way that they know that at the moment of any type of catastrophe, they know where things are going to come from and how they can use it to take care of themselves. You know, I ask myself as a man, I have a mother here and sisters and nieces and nephews. What would I do in emergency response to look out for all of those interests of mine? And how would I have developed such a process? So those are one of the things, some of the things that we're looking at in the workshops, is talking about what can reasonably be done within the confines of the law and the services that are already in existence.
You know, Reverend Dockery, since you've dealt so much with social response and responsibility, and et cetera, I think since you mentioned this whole issue of New Orleans, I think that it also will allow us to raise this issue, that what we've observed over the last many days since this occurred is that there's been a tremendous outpouring on the part of the American people for the evacuees. And so now, do you feel that because of this, that there might be a different sentiment in this country in reference to those individuals? See, here we're dealing with individuals who were displaced, et cetera, and we all have a very, very real passion in reference to trying to help them. They've lost everything, and etc. But there are some individuals who are on the streets,
Right.
who homeless and that group and etc. That they've been there, and we've not done that much in terms of dealing with them. And of course, I know the rationale might be, well, these other individuals were caught up in the hurricane and etc. And these other individuals, as we generally see individuals who are homeless, as being worthless and with no responsibility, etc. But do you think that there might be a change in terms of our perception of individuals since this happened?
I think on a national level there's going to be some debate on the issue of separation of race and class, and that's fine. But I think more importantly, the individuals that are affected directly by it have to have their own dialogue and have to come up with their own resolution and have to take a more responsible role in addressing those issues. One thing in particular I noticed is that there were a lot of young black males who were actually doing the raping and doing the looting and shooting and having conflict with the authorities and so forth. And it's interesting that over the years, our young males have learned that whenever they have a stressful issue, the only way to respond is out of violence, because violence is the only answer that they've ever learned to deal with. One of the things they need to learn is how to process certain circumstances, such that they learn how to deal with them in a way that is going to be beneficial to them and not cause more destruction or more mayhem. And so I think that's one of the key things. I believe that in any city in America, if a catastrophe of that nature were to happen, our young men must be prepared to not add to the problem, but to be willing participants to solving the problem based off of information and understanding and knowledge.
And you believe that you have in this seminar so constructed and so tested in a real sense, because I think that you've been really working with this program, not only in this program, but also building families and communities and et cetera. And so this has been almost a life work with you.
Right.
And so you finally think that you have the kind of the program that's necessary to reach out and deal with it.
I'm not naive enough to believe that I have a cure-all, but I certainly believe that we have a foundation for building on the right type of dialogue and structure. And that's the key to having the participants come up with their own answers to their own problems.
Well, do you have any job kind of things associated with this program? Or is there anything that you can say in terms, because in many instances, what many of these young people need is some kind of job opportunities and et cetera.
Sure, and I think it's key to focus on job opportunities as a stepping stone to entrepreneurial development. Because quite often, it's easy to put a young man on a job, but the question is, how long will he stay, and what will be the factors that determine how long he stays? If he's in a position where he's owning something, he's making a contribution to the economic infrastructure of the country, he feels a lot better about himself. So certainly working a job until such time as you can develop the skills and the knowledge to become an entrepreneur. And I think that's a focus that's missing quite often in our outreach to challenged and disadvantaged populations, as this one that we're talking about.
Very good. And of course, Reverend Dockery, we have about 2 minutes before we end the show for today. And we want to use the last couple of minutes that we have here to give you an opportunity to make a special kind of appeal to whoever you wish to make that appeal in reference to what you're trying to do, because I think you have already demonstrated that there's a tremendous need for what you're doing.
All right. Well, let me just start by saying I could be reached at 3738 Hydes Ferry Road, Nashville, Tennessee, 37218. Phone number 615-256-7886. That is the office number. And I invite any sponsors in particular to give us a call, and we can answer any questions they might have more specifically about what we're doing. 615-256-7886. That's 3738 Hydes Ferry Road, Nashville, Tennessee, 37218. And that's the home of both Mount Sinai Cumberland Presbyterian Church, as well as Building Families and Communities Missions Incorporated.
And so you think you're ready, Reverend Dockery, to handle the outgrowth of such a program?
Absolutely.
You think that there's a time and that we're ready for such a program, and you think that you have, you don't have the cure-all, as you said.
No, but
you've got something that can push us quite a way down the road.
A foundation.
Foundation. And I think that's what we need more than anything. I think that if we can find a number of individuals with programs that have that kind of foundation, then I think that we will certainly be fortunate, and I think we will be able to handle and deal with some of the problems that we have. And so, Reverend Doctor, let me thank you over the last few minutes that we have here.
Thank you for having me.
For coming by and giving us that excellent information, and I'm sure that in the end, it will have a tremendous impact upon our audience as well as others. And I certainly want to thank you. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Cummings. Thank you and good morning.
You work for the government, right? Can you tell me how to get student loans for the kids here?
Oh, I don't know about that. You want to see a geyser?
Back in the car.